Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another episode of Crewzin the Void. My name's Fish, and today we're going to be talking about the history of physical fitness and fitness tests and how people viewed fitness throughout history. So, buckle up and let's go. The biggest question that I asked this week was, if you were born in Sparta, they took the males in general and started training them at 7 years old. Would you have passed those fitness tests? And then I just kind of went down the rabbit hole. And so let's kind of talk and run things back. So the idea of physical fitness has been around for a while, and maybe not in the same iterations that we see it today. It's not specifically measured, but there were things throughout history that did tell us that people trained and did specific movements and tasks to grow, both strength-wise and spiritually. So, in the prehistoric era, we know that we had to run, jump, fish, hunt, all these different type of things came about. Were they necessarily something that we drilled in all the time? No. But if you think of what they had to do just to live, they were doing it every single day, a lot more, right? You're running out to chase down a boar. You're running from dinosaurs. You're running, I don't know, insert your favorite thing. And so this was all just kind of built into them. And then they had different types of play and whatnot. Every tribe had their different types of games. But I think some of the earliest things that we can see as true tests of fitness were like rituals where you became a man or a woman. Specifically, one that I want to talk about is the Savante tribe in Brazil. So the young boys would become men through hunting. So they would go out on hunts together, and then eventually the boys would go out on their own, and they would go get their hunt, and then they would come back, and once you come back with your own hunt, you're a man. That is a test and a prowess of all of your physical attributes while you're out there. How you use them appropriately is up to you, right? Are you small, somebody who can stalk for hours, or are you a bigger guy that kind of needs to use his environment around him and stand still and create different traps and whatnot? Are you somebody who may not be very fast, so you can't stalk, so you have to set traps? All different types of techniques were used and trained and taught into these boys, and then they took that out into the hunting world. Another one very similar is the Maasai tribe. The Maasais in Kenya and Tanzania did the same thing, but they would hunt lions. So they would teach the boys, and once they finally became of age, they would go hunt a lion by themselves. And that was their form of a physical test, right? Nowadays, we have numbers, and we say if you can do X amount of pull-ups, you're in shape. If you can do X amount of push-ups, you're in shape. Well, back then, it was if you could track down and hunt and kill a lion, you were in shape. And that's a pretty cool idea to think that we've always had these ideas of what peak physical fitness should look like. Now, here's where I think things get a little bit interesting, and we're going to see some changes throughout history. Now, Egypt, Mesopotamia, Persia, you can see throughout all the pottery, the walls, and everything that was put together that they had different forms of physical fitness for their warriors, for their special guard, X, Y, and Z. Specifically, though, let's talk about the Sed Festival. The Sed Festival was something that every pharaoh had to do. And at the age of, or once they, not the age of 30, once they reached their 30th year of ruling, the Sed Festival would happen. What that would be is they would have to go do an obstacle course or run laps around the city or something. And everybody would come out and praise them and cheer on their leaders for being able to do the Sed test. Now, the Sed represents that they are still in physical shape to keep. Now, we can get into what all this means behind closed doors with different pharaohs and get in. So what the pharaoh would do is run around a preset obstacle course or city after ruling for 30 years and show that he or she, because there were female pharaohs as well, that were still in physical shape and in shape enough to keep going. Now, some of the different pharaohs had their said at different times throughout the years. More specifically, there was a female pharaoh. Let me look her name up. Specifically, there was a female pharaoh, Hatshepsut, who held her first said festival very early and did it up to 3 times, they guessed, during her rule. So she might have done one every 10 years and just showed the people, look, I still got it, baby. That's awesome. I think that idea of showing off your physical prowess, because they obviously looked at it as, hey, if this person's in physical shape, they are divine, they are disciplined, they are X, Y, and Z, and all the different things that people still value today, seeing somebody who's in physically good shape. Now, let's go into Greece and Rome. Specifically, some of the biggest things that we know that came out of Greece and Rome for fitness-wise was the Olympics. The Olympics started with simply boxing, racing, wrestling, pentathlon. Think of different types of military prowess training, and then grew into what it is over the years. Now, with that, the Romans also valued these specific feats and abilities. So sometimes Roman legions would test their people if they were ready by doing 20-mile marches with 60 pounds of gear. We obviously know the marathon comes from Greece. The story a little bit different. The guy died at the end delivering the message. But oftentimes you had to be in shape because they didn't have email, didn't have phone calls. They didn't also necessarily have birds that they could send from place to place. So if you wanted to send a message to the next town and you wanted to send a message quickly, you call somebody who you know can run, and he ran his happy ass over to the other town and told them, hey, this is what's going down. So with that, the Greeks and Romans very much had physical prowess and fitness and training up on their higher levels of, I'd say, morality. Let's also talk about the Spartans during this time frame. These boys started training similar to the Aztec Eagle Warriors that we talked about last week at 7 years old. Obviously, the best of the best of the best of the best were the ones that came up and grew into the armies and became soldiers and whatnot. But imagine undergoing this type of stuff at 7. Like in our gyms nowadays, in gym class at 7, you're doing like jumping jacks. These guys are doing push-ups and pull-ups at 7. It was a different game back then. I also want to talk about how Greek philosophers viewed fitness. So, specifically Xenophon, who was a student of Socrates, emphasized, I'm going to get this wrong, enkratia, which is self-control over your passions, which also includes physical fitness and endurance. So basically what this idea was the idea of being able to control your own inhibitions, right? I want to be lazy. I want to just go out and drink tonight. I want to not do the chores and tasks that I have to. And one of the things that these guys really believed in, and Plato as well, is that training the body is an integral part of self-mastery. So if you're not going to train yourself to be your human physical body to be the best version of it that it can be, then you can't ultimately meet the highest version of yourself, which is an interesting concept, and I really like that. They also helped drive this into their schools, obviously, that they taught at. They taught people to go run. They should be doing different physical activities, wrestling. You have to remember, a lot of the times back then, these guys didn't necessarily go to the gym. just lift weights. They had that as an option, but more often than not, a lot of these dudes back then were hunters. They were foot soldiers. They were city guards. So they had a lot of physical training in combat per se. Now, as we move forward a little bit more, we get into the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. Okay? Peasants obviously never got anything in the feudal system. They got theirs through labor. But your knights and higher people of nobility had physical training all the time. You see this, tons of things that they used for training to get better in war, different dummies. If they were a jouster, they had different training things for that. Obviously, we have this tale old as time as archers shooting at different targets. So they knew what it took to get there, but they separated it inside of the caste system because obviously they want more noblemen to be the idea of perfection. And that's something that just was important in the time. And then as humanism rised a lot more, we saw this spread across everybody. But even in the Middle Ages, they had a good idea of what it should look like and what it should be doing so that we can have the best version of people in front of us. Now, we get into kind of the modern age, strength and conditioning. We understand how the body works a lot more, but the godfather of gymnastics, they say, is Gutsmitz from Germany. Back in 1793, he was the one that really started to build a gymnasium in the modern way that we know. Because to say that they didn't have gyms back in the day is incorrect. They had gyms, but they didn't have them designed in the modern way that we saw them. If you look back at Greece, the way that they trained is their wrestling, boxing, all that type of stuff was just in sandpits that they put together. And so it was a gym, you are correct. But now what Gutsmitz did is start to put the climbing rope together, hurdles that you can jump over. We didn't necessarily have weights at that time, but he was starting to put the idea of heavy implements together that you had to carry giant stones throughout the gym, beams, ladders, a bunch of different ideas of, think of, again, what the modern gym would start to look like. Then the British Army really started to make the best version of this conditioning. They started marching, doing musket drills, bayonet charges. You can think of more of the modern military coming from those British Army, because for a long time, your militias and your armies were generally just the people that you had around. Your noblemen, we talked about, would train to be better. But more often than not, it was just kind of the homies would grab a shield. Now, the British Army started to implement real training. And at different camps, they also became basic training where they would start doing push-ups, pull-ups, running, jumping, marches, form drills, basic combat, X, Y, and Z. And this spanned out across many different militaries and growing forward. The other thing that I don't know where it got lost in time was we saw that the Greeks and the Romans had their training as well. And I don't really know, but I'm curious to see if they kept it just to the noble people as well, like kind of the higher up statesmen, because what we do know about ancient Greece is even though we like to think of them as the godfathers and kings of democracy, it was really the rich guys that just had the time to go become politicians. Those are really who the politicians were. So I think if this, I wonder if the same caste economics played during that time frame as the Middle Ages. But now let's kind of fast forward a little bit and move into modern day gyms, right? So we've gotten the idea, I'd say, over the past 100 years, where we really have the modern fitness training. We have so much more knowledge now that we can implement into modern gym classes. Teaching kids about BMI, teaching kids functional movements, how to squat, how to deadlift, how to hinge appropriately, how to get full motion out of your shoulders and arms. I think we could start to implement that a lot more, and we can see the true growth of our people, for lack of a better term. I want to see that in our modern gym classes and start to carry over a lot more, because one of the things that we see is you got the kids that ran the mile and now are probably playing pickleball, right? Like that's the same dudes. Or you probably got the same people that were walking the mile playing pickleball nowadays. And that's its own conversation of physical fitness. But one of the big things that I think we can do is start to teach each other of how these skills transfer over into life and how they should transfer over more. Because one thing that we've lost, obviously, is we don't have as many hunter-gatherers as we used to. We have a lot of different ways of developing our own resources now that we have money. So we need to go back, take a step back and go back into what made us so successful in these time frames and start to implement them a lot more. One of the big things that I also do like seeing is seeing the growth of fitness tests over time. So one of the other really cool things with the military is we've also seen the US military adapt over time with their fitness tests. They've recently moved into the combat fitness test, which is a lot different than the old fitness test. Previous fitness test used to be sit-ups, push-ups, run 2 miles. Super simple. You would get a scoring system based on that. Now it includes deadlifts, heavy carry, a long run, particular hanging drill to see how long you can hang, pull-ups, squats as well. So now we're testing every part of fitness, and I love every single bit of that. Things are going to continue to grow and keep going, and I'm excited to see where they go. But what do you think is going to be the next evolution of the fitness test? This episode was brought to you by Fischer Fitness Solutions, and if you want to become the best version of yourself, reach out to us at fisherfitnesssolutions.com and enjoy the rest of your day.